All right. Hello. Back to session number two. I wanted to let you guys know that if you guys have any questions about the book or like any questions about any of the words or anything like that, you can always email myself or Miss Moultrie or Miss Vesna or Mr. Ken, and we will absolutely help you understand because this author is English and it makes the book a little bit harder to navigate through and kind of understand. It's a little bit older of a book as well. So, yeah, if you guys have any questions or anything like that, let me know. Let any of us know. They also have a couple movies about these books that are kind of fun. So, if you guys are looking for something to do, I mean, I always encourage you to go to your local. I guess you can't go to the library. Reach out to me if you are more curious about the book, and I will literally buy you a book. All right, here we go. Let's get right back into it. So, the last sentence that we left off on were, "What do you think these are?" said Polly, pointing at the colored rings. "Oh, come on," said Diggory. The sooner he never finished what he was going to say, for at that moment something happened. The high-backed chair in front of the fire moved suddenly, and then rose, and there rose up out of it, like a pantomime demon coming out of a trapdoor, the alarming form of Uncle Andrew. They were not in the empty house at all. They were in Diggory's house and in the forbidden study. Both children said, "Oh," and realized their terrible mistake. They felt they ought to have known all along that they hadn't gone nearly far enough. Uncle Andrew was tall and very thin. He had a long, clean-shaven face with a sharply pointed nose and extremely bright eyes and a great tousled mop of gray hair. Diggory was quite speechless, for Uncle Andrew looked 1,000 times more alarming than he had ever looked before. Polly was not so frightened yet, but soon she was. For the very first thing Uncle Andrew did was walk across to the door of the room, shut it, and turn the key in the lock. Then he turned around, fixed the children with his bright eyes, and smiled, showing his teeth. "There," he said. "Now my fool of a sister can't get at you." It was dreadfully unlike anything a grown-up would be expected to do. Polly's heart came into her mouth, and she and Diggory started backing towards the little door they had come in by. Uncle Andrew was too quick for them. He got behind them and shut the door too, and stood in front of it. Then he rubbed his hands and made his knuckles crack. He had very long, beautiful white fingers. "I am delighted to see you," he said. Two children are just what I wanted." "Please, Mr. Ketterly," said Polly. "It's nearly my dinner time, and I've got to go home. Will you let us out, please?" "Not just yet," said Uncle Andrew. "You see, I'm in the middle of a great experiment. I've tried it with the guinea pig, and it seemed to work. But then the guinea pig can't tell you anything, and you can't explain to it to how to come back." "Look here, Uncle Andrew," said Diggory. "It really is dinner time, and they'll be looking for us in a moment. You must let us out." "Must," said Uncle Andrew. Diggory and Polly glanced at one another. They dared not say anything, but the glances meant, "Isn't this disgraceful?" and "We must humor him." "If you let us go for our dinner now," said Polly, "we could come back after dinner." "Ah, but how do I know that you would?" said Uncle Andrew, with a cunning smile. Then he seemed to change his mind. "Well, well," he said, "if you really must go, I suppose you must. I can't expect two youngsters like you to find it much fun talking to an old buffer like me." He sighed and went on. "You've no idea how lonely I sometimes am, but no matter. You go to dinner. But I must give you a present before you go." It's not every day that I see a little girl in my dingy old study, especially if I may say so, such a very attractive young lady as yourself. Polly began to think he might not really be mad at all. Wouldn't you like a ring, my dear? Said Uncle Andrew to Polly. Do you mean one of those yellow or green ones? Said Polly. How lovely. Not a green one, said Uncle Andrew. I'm afraid I can't give the green ones away, but I'd be delighted to give you any one of the yellow ones. With my love, come and try it on. Polly had not quite got over her fright and felt sure that the old gentleman was not mad. And there was certainly something strangely attractive about those bright rings. She moved over to the tray. Why, I declare, she said, that humming noise gets louder here. It's almost as if the rings were making it. What a funny fancy, my dear, said Uncle Andrew with a laugh. It sounded a very natural laugh, but Diggory had seen an eager, almost a greedy look on his face. Polly, don't be a fool, he shouted. Don't touch them. It was too late. Exactly as he spoke, Polly's hand went out to touch one of the rings, and immediately, without a flash or a noise or a warning of any sort, there was no Polly. Diggory and his uncle were left in the room. Chapter 2. Diggory and his uncle. It was so sudden and so horribly unlike anything that had ever happened to Diggory, even in a nightmare, that he let out a scream. Instantly, Uncle Andrew's hand was over his mouth. None of that, he hissed. None of that, he hissed in Diggory's ear. If you start making a noise, your mother will hear, and you know what a fright might do her. As Diggory said afterwards, the horrible meaningless of getting at a chap in that way almost made him sick. But of course, he didn't scream again. That's better, said Uncle Andrew. Perhaps you couldn't help it. It is a shock when you first see someone vanish. Why, it gave me a turn when the guinea pig did that the other night. Was that when you yelled? Said Diggory. Oh, you heard that, did you? I hope you haven't been spying on me. No, I haven't, said Diggory indignantly. But what's happened to Polly? Congratulate me, my dear boy, said Uncle Andrew, rubbing his hands. My experiment has succeeded. The little girl's gone, vanished, right out of the world. What have you done to her? Sent her to, well, another place. What do you mean? Said Diggory. Uncle Andrew sat down and said, well, I'll tell you all about it. Have you ever heard of old Miss LeFay? Wasn't she a great aunt or something? Said Diggory. Not exactly, said Uncle Andrew. She was my grandmother. That's her, right there on the wall. Diggory looked and saw a faded photograph. It showed the face of an old woman in a bonnet, and he could now remember that he had once seen a photo of the same face in an old drawer at home in the country. He had asked his mother who it was, and mother had not seemed to want to talk about the subject much. It was not at all a nice face, Diggory thought, though of course with those early photographs one could never really tell. Wasn't there something wrong with her? Uncle Andrew asked. Well, Uncle Andrew, he asked. Well, said Uncle Andrew with a chuckle, it depends what you call wrong. People are so narrow-minded. She certainly got very queer in later life, did very unwise things. That's why they shut her up. In an asylum, do you mean? Oh, no, 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 said Uncle Andrew in a shocked voice. Nothing of that sort. Only a prison. I say, said Diggory, What had she done? Ah, poor woman, said Uncle Andrew. She had been very unwise. There were a good many different things. We needn't get into all of that. She was always very kind to me. But look here. What has all this got to do with Polly? I do wish you'd... All in good time, my boy, said Uncle Andrew. They let old Miss LeFay out before she died, and I was one of the very few people whom she would allow to see her in her last illness. She had got to dislike ordinary, ignorant people, you understand? I do myself. But she and I were interested in the same sort of things. It was only a few days before her death that she told me to go to an old bureau in her house and open a secret drawer and bring her a little box that I would find in there. The moment I picked up that box, I could tell by the prickling in my fingers that I held some great secret in my hands. She gave it to me and made me promise that as soon as she was dead, I would burn it, unopened, with certain ceremonies. That promise I did not keep. Well then, it was jolly rotten of you, said Diggory. Rotten, said Uncle Andrew with a puzzled look. Oh, I see. You mean that little boys ought to keep their promises. Very true. Most right and proper, I'm sure. And I'm very glad that you had been taught to do it. But of course, you must understand that rules of that sort, however excellent they may be for little boys and servants and women, and even people in general, can't possibly be expected to apply to profound students and great thinkers and sages. No, Diggory. Men like me, who possess hidden wisdom, are freed from common rules just as we are cut off from common pleasures. Ours, my boy, is a hard and lonely destiny. As he said this, he sighed and looked so grave and noble and mysterious that for a second Diggory really thought he was saying something rather fine. But then he remembered the ugly look he had seen on his uncle's face the moment before Polly had vanished, and all at once he saw through Uncle Andrew's grand words. It all means, he said to himself, is that he thinks he can do anything he likes to get anything he wants. Of course, said Uncle Andrew. I don't dare to open a box for a long time, for I knew it might contain something highly dangerous. For my grandmother was a very remarkable woman. The truth is, she was one of the last mortals in this country who had fairy blood in her. She said there had been two others in her time. One was a duchess, and the other a charwoman. In fact, Diggory, you are now talking to the last man, possibly, who really had a fairy godmother. There. That'll be something for you to remember when you are an old man yourself. All right. That is where we're going to stop for that one. And like I said, if you guys have any questions or anything like that about any of the content of the book or any of the words or anything like that, feel free to send me an email. Try your best to spell it out, or just let me know what time in the video that it came up, and I will do my best to clarify for you. All right. Until next time, guys. Part 3. Mr. Mike signing off. Bye.